Good morning and welcome to News Breakfast. I'm Beverly O'Connor.
And I'm Paul Kennedy. Glad you could join us on the first day of the new year.
The world welcomes 2015 as fireworks light up the night skies right across the globe.
The first coffins return as bad weather hampers the search for more Air Asia crash victims.
The ships are looking to operate 24 hours, which is very encouraging, and they're moving all the assets to the two spots which they think the aircraft could be.
Spies like us. Secret Hawke government documents reveal how Russia spied on Australia.
Everyone knew that everyone was in it. We were in it ourselves. It was part of the, I won't say game.
From diva to dame, Joan Collins heads the Queen's New Year's honours list.
And in sport, the Adelaide Strikers started fireworks early against Hobart at the Adelaide Oval last night.
Milfy, who got 19, tapped off his first day. Oh, bang! Watch out in the dugout.
Well, millions of revellers across Australia and Asia kicked off the new year with spectacular fireworks displays and parties. Auckland in New Zealand was the first major city to enter 2015, followed by Sydney and Melbourne, which staged multi-million-dollar displays.
The East Coast fireworks were followed by shows in other capitals and major displays in Hong Kong and Beijing. North Korea even joined the fun, with residents treated to fireworks in the capital, Pyongyang.
And throughout the morning, we'll report on celebrations around the country. First, let's go to Sydney, and reporter Thomas Ariti was there to join the party.
Well, the organisers said that it would be bigger and better than ever, and I don't think they disappointed. Certainly not the 17,000 people around me here at Mrs Macquarie's chair, arguably one of the best vantage points in Sydney, but indeed the 1.6 million people lining the Sydney Harbour foreshore. It really was quite spectacular. 100,000 separate explosions on 7 barges in Sydney Harbour, of course near the sails of the Opera House, and the focal point of every New Year's Eve Sydney celebration, that is the Sydney Harbour Bridge. One of the biggest features of any New Year's Eve celebration in Sydney, certainly since the mid-1990s, has been the top-secret Sydney Harbour Bridge effect. And this year we can reveal that it was a light globe, I guess fitting in with this theme of Inspire. That was this year's theme for the Sydney Harbour New Year's Eve celebrations, in terms of switching on one's imagination, enlightenment. And that was revealed at the end of the 12-minute fireworks display, lit up by 13 kilometres of LED ropes. It was 12 stories high and really quite extraordinary. Before that, the Sydney Harbour sky lit up in a sea of colour. The Sydney Harbour Bridge almost resembled a golden waterfall of light with the way the fireworks poured off the edge. It was quite extraordinary and capped off about 6 hours of festivities. We saw air shows, we saw tugboats propelling water metres into the sky. We saw about 50 boats carrying 8,000 people lit up as part of the Sydney Harbour light show, and 2 other spectacular fireworks displays even preceding this show-stopping grand finale. Let's not forget that in addition to the 1.6 million people, about 1 billion people are expected to have watched Sydney welcome the new year around the world. It's seen as one of the most advanced and biggest fireworks displays of its kind, and it attracts audiences bigger than New York and London, and you can certainly see why. I imagine it's made every Sydney-sider proud tonight after what's been a very difficult 2 weeks for this city. You got the sense, talking to a lot of people tonight, that they simply wanted to relax and welcome a new year. This certainly enabled them to do that, and it also ticked off an item bucket list for many people visiting Australia for the first time. Certainly a very successful evening here at Mrs Macquarie's chair in Sydney.
Looks pretty good in Sydney last night, as we were predicting yesterday, but I've got to be honest, I can't really tell the difference between fireworks, but there seemed to be a lot more maybe on the bridge there, and the light globe was the difference this year.
The light globe was what they thought about all year, and that's what they came up with, a light bulb moment. But I think they have spectacularly refined that waterfall. For me, that really set Sydney apart, that ability.
From the bottom, you mean?
Yeah, you know, when it looks like that waterfall,
yeah.
You saw it in Thomas's report there. It just is so spectacular. Not a lot of other countries can do that because they don't have that kind of infrastructure. This is what they have really just mastered over the last couple of years. But you're right, and we've got Dubai coming up very shortly, and really they have broken the Guinness Book of Records for the number of fireworks they have. They love bigger and better in Dubai, and we'll bring you that later. But of course, what surprised me that Pyongyang put on a spectacular show. There was Auckland, of course, the very first city. Not a bad bird's eye view. That tower in Auckland, always the first city that really goes off with a big bang. And we can carry on right throughout other major cities. North Korea, I mean, I'm surprised at how much effort they've put in, which is, I guess, that Kim Jong-un is really, well, it's hard to know how much in control he is in North Korea, but they made a big effort.
He's in charge of the fireworks. He's done it 3 years in a row now, haven't they, since he took over? These are the big things. Lovely to see people out. Some people enjoying that. I think we can look at Melbourne
and Beijing.
Beijing.
Oh, so that's around. That would be familiar to you, Paul.
That's a nice countdown there.
The water cube. What was it called? The cube, which was built by.
That was for the Olympics, wasn't it?
Indeed, yeah.
The 2008 Olympics.
Yeah.
There you go, some dancing and similar scenes. There's Melbourne, and they don't have.
Did they wake you up in the night?
No, I didn't hear them actually last night. I went to bed a little bit earlier. Should be said. I didn't stay out for midnight, but I knew I was going to bounce out of bed and get to see all of them.
Let's go
this morning. There's Brisbane down by the river, and that looks like South Bank there. Brisbane's always a nice place to be on New Year's Eve.
Adelaide's coming too. No one wanted to miss out. And of course the Adelaide Oval, that spectacularly redeveloped oval, is a perfect spot for it now. So much development along that waterfront. Let's go to Darwin. That's a massive display from Darwin.
Just a couple of people in the backyard, let them go there. No, it looks good. Of course, fireworks all have to sort of fit in with the population, and they're quite nice there for Darwin. There's been some commemorations, of course, big commemorations because of the anniversary of Cyclone Tracy there in Darwin.
Of course.
So they're just celebrating the city that was reborn after that cyclone.
And let's just finally go to New York, which we know, of course, is some way off celebrating New Year's, which is always quite bizarre when we're sort of well and truly past it. They're waiting for the famous ball, which will drop on the stroke of midnight, and it's been raised. A movie was made about it. I think it was on television last night as they wait for that countdown every year. But the crowds, like Sydney yesterday, Paul, would have been gathering and getting their little positions around Times Square. It is pretty special.
Yeah, particularly the tourists, I guess. If you've travelled there to be there for New Year's Eve in New York, you want to get it as good a spot as you can. And some tweets going out this morning from a couple of comedians in the US saying that 2015, of course, is the year that was set in the film Back to the Future 2. You might remember that Doc and Marty went forward 30 years from 1985. And we might even work through a couple of pictures and a list of what was supposed to happen by 2015. And no flying cars in the sky there over New York. No hoverboards either, but they did get a couple of things right.
We'll keep bringing you various celebrations as the morning progresses. As I mentioned, Dubai and I think Moscow will probably be ringing in the new year as well. But of course, in other news, New Year celebrations were cancelled in Surabaya, where the first coffins bearing victims of the Air Asia plane crash have arrived. Next of kin have been asked for DNA samples to try and help identify victims. Authorities say 7 bodies have now been pulled from the sea off Borneo, but bad weather is hampering recovery efforts. 162 people were on the plane when it went down on Sunday.
The National Archives has released thousands of top-secret records of the Hawke government from the late 1980s. They include revelations that the Soviet Union bugged Australia's embassy in Moscow. Previously classified material also details cabinet deliberations on issues such as climate change and the introduction of the higher education charge.
Smoking a pipe, you wouldn't see that these days. In Tasmania, efforts will resume this morning to retrieve the bodies of two men who died when their light plane crashed while filming the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. The Cessna was found intact on the seabed in the storm 90 metres below the surface. Sonar imaging has confirmed that 29-year-old pilot Sam Langford and 61-year-old photographer Tim Jones are both still inside the plane.
Australian journalist Peter Grester is due to appeal his prison sentence in Egypt later today. It's been a year since he and two Al Jazeera colleagues were jailed on charges of aiding the banned Muslim Brotherhood. They received sentences of between 7 to 10 years. Mr Grester's parents say they are not giving up hope that their son may be soon freed.
Almost 1,000 asylum seekers have been rescued from a cargo ship found drifting near the Greek island of Corfu. It's believed the crew were people smugglers who abandoned the vessel before it reached the Italian coastline. The ship is now docked in southern Italy, and most of the Syrians on board have been taken to shelter.
The last survivors to be rescued from a stricken Italian ferry have finally arrived back on dry land. At least 11 people are dead and dozens are missing after the ferry caught fire last Sunday. Rough seas have made the rescue operation extremely difficult.
More than 30 people have been killed and dozens injured in a suicide bombing in Yemen. The attack happened at a cultural centre in the southern city of Ib. No one has claimed responsibility, but rebels who recently gained control of the capital have blamed Al-Qaeda.
And the star of Dynasty and The Stud has been made a dame. Joan Collins has been recognised in the New Year's Honours list for her services to children's charities. The Queen has also bestowed damehoods on actor Kristen Scott Thomas and the fashion designer Mary Quant. Veteran actor John Hurt gets a knighthood along with Simon Campbell, the chemist who brought us Viagra.
London's FTSE is up. The Aussie dollar is buying 82 US cents. Tapis crude is trading at $57 a barrel and gold is at 1,183 US an ounce.
For the first time today, giving you insights into the inner workings of the Hawke government.
To mark the release, former Prime Minister Bob Hawke spoke to political reporter Andrew Green.
Mr Hawke, thank you for your time. If we can go back to 1988, you had just won your third election and you were talking about seeing it through. The Treasurer was talking about bringing home the bacon. What did that mean for your government?
Well, what we were really about is we'd, in the beginning, made all the big, hard decisions that had to be made to turn the economy around from the mess it was in that we inherited. A double-digit unemployment, double-digit inflation, uncompetitive economy. So we'd made all those big decisions, and now the external situation was pressing, and our task was to keep the momentum and commitment to reform and change.
Tiananmen Square also occurred during this time. Can you tell me about the personal effect that had on you and then how it guided your thinking?
I just received a cable from our embassy setting out in rather terrible detail what had happened in the square, and when I went out I was visibly moved because I really loved China and the Chinese people, and this just was, I thought, a great tragedy, human tragedy, a national tragedy. And I made the decision there and then that the students here could stay.
Mr Hawke, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Interesting interview with Bob Hawke there from Andrew Green. So it's always nice to look back at those cabinet papers.
And lovely when they're so frank about what really went on. When you think about the hullabaloo at the start of this year with those spying scandals, just very frank. Everyone was doing it. Yep.
And the Queensland cabinet papers come out. It's been interesting for the last couple of years too, reading about the cabinet papers of the Bjelke Petersen era as well. So we might get around to those. They're certainly online. We've got all the details there as well. Let's go to the front pages of the major newspapers around the country this morning. Most of the papers welcome the dawn of 2015. They held the presses, and the Sydney Morning Herald devotes its front page to a spectacular shot of fireworks above the Opera House and simply says, "Let there be light."
The Daily Telegraph celebrates a new year of hope. The paper says 2015 may be a fresh start with the troubles and tragedy of 2014 consigned to history.
The Guardian Australia says Sydney's display included a tribute to the Martin Place siege victims, Tory Johnson and Katrina Dawson in the form of a floral display on the pylons of the bridge.
In the Mercury, thousands of people lined Hobart's waterfront to farewell 2014 and count in the new year with a spectacular fireworks display above the Sydney to Hobart yacht fleet.
One of the best places to be in Australia at the moment, with the Taste of Tasmania going on down there, and the Courier Mail chooses not to go with fireworks. It heralds 2015 with a lovely picture here, a beach scene, a reminder that Queensland's the best place on earth.
A bright future is the headline in the Herald Sun. Similarly, going down a different path, it pictures some of the babies who graced its 2014 New Year edition as newborns. One not very happy little fellow at the end, as you can see in it. They talk to their parents about their hopes and dreams.
The Northern Territory News predicts 2015 will be a corker and brings us the story of a Darwin man who was found with a wheelie bin full of stolen alcohol.
There's one of those headlines that Michael would just love.
Yep, yeah, that'll probably go into the book for next year.
The West Australian looks beyond the boom, beginning a series of special reports examining WA's economic prospects as the mining boom winds down.
The Advertiser reports on calls to cut the maximum speed limit after a horror week on South Australian roads. The state recorded 107 deaths in 2014 compared with 97 the previous year.
The Australian carries interviews with three former Prime Ministers, Bob Hawke, as we have just done, Paul Keating and John Howard. The trio have called for urgent budget repairs and bipartisanship on economic policy. It comes as the National Archives of Australia released those cabinet papers from 1988 to 89.
The Canberra Times delves into the cabinet papers to find that the Commonwealth ignored advice to take full responsibility for the costs of Mr Fluffy loose fill asbestos insulation.
And in The Age, the cabinet papers have also revealed that the Hawke government feared Indonesia was becoming a nuclear powerhouse.
It really is. We've got the heat in the south and we've also got this monsoonal trough that's really starting to strengthen up in the northern parts of the country. It will be the first time that we see the very heavy rainfalls come for this season. Darwin has already had around 40 millimetres this morning and that rain is going to keep on coming. We'll take a look and see the troughs that are currently moving over the nation. There is that one that's to the north and stretching as it becomes more organised right over that northern tropical region, and also the trough that's heading inland. It's currently moving towards the central and eastern parts of Western Australia, and a sizzler on the way for Adelaide, heading for a top of 42 degrees on Friday. For Queensland today, and an upper level trough is bringing some warm and humid weather. We're looking at around 42 degrees in the Channel Country. Not quite so bad in the southeast, but showers and storms in the north, central and also along parts of the east coast. New South Wales, thunderstorms only in the northeast. Heat is being drawn back into the west. We're up to 40 degrees again in Bourke. Cooler sea breezes along the coast, 28 degrees in Sydney. Victoria becoming warmer in the north, still rather mild in the south with afternoon sea breezes, but get ready for a string of hot days. Melbourne 38 degrees on Friday and Saturday. In Tasmania, plenty of cloud to put a dampener on this first day of the year. Showers mainly in the west, south and east, but we can see the heat around Launceston becoming more widespread over the next few days. South Australia, just isolated showers in the southeast. For everybody else, a fine start to the new year, but very hot up in the north, and that heat descends south tomorrow. In Western Australia, with the heat heading further east, 40 degrees in Giles. A fine day along the west coast, but the trough is driving fresh sea breezes and hot conditions about the western Pilbara and central west coast. Extreme fire danger about the west Pilbara coast and severe Ashburton inland, Exmouth Gulf Coast and inland central west. And we'll continue to see the showers and storms around the coastal areas, around that north coast, especially around the top end and the Kimberley, and they will be quite heavy at times over the coming days. Looking ahead to tomorrow, possible shower for Sydney, a sunny day in Melbourne, very hot, 38 degrees, and Brisbane, showers a top of 29 degrees. But Bev and Paul, certainly some very hot weather on the way.